Welcome to Gothic Tales. A program dedicated to the macabre writings of one-time New York City resident Edgar Allan Poe. And to the various New York City actors, authors, and Gothic storytellers who have been inspired by his works. Tonight's episode will feature Poe's most famous poem, The Raven, presented by your host, William Trevino, followed by Nimue Rising, an original fantasy narrative presented by Queen's author, Laurie J. Tyrone. So sit forward on the edge of your seat, don't relax, and enjoy the show. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more." Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Nameless here, forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, oh, my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door. Perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless said I, "What it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never, nevermore." But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. Listen more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, on whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tuffet floor. "Wretch," I cried, "thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. O quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," said I, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," said I, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of the lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Nimue Rising by Laurie J. Tyrone. I knew the sky would not hold her. The truth in the stories is not nature or magic. There was no deus ex machina transformation into a sparrow. The girl fell from the cliff, her body a final exhale from the world above the lake, until she came to me. Our water is both a wall and a door. The lake laid the girl to rest within the henge of stones inscribed with luminous green algae, embedding her in the centuries-thick humus of leaf, scale, cloth, and bone. Her long hair swayed like weeds. The fish crept from their hiding spots, only a small band of survivors with lean bellies and dull scales, eyes darting in hunger and fear. They kissed away her clothing and skin. The lake's gentle susurration eroded the hurt she had carried inside like a stone, while the fish excavated her, taking meaty chunks of heart and lungs to their broods. Had she jumped or been thrown? She remembered a page torn from a book, wet ink shining in candlelight, running towards or away. It didn't matter. Either way, she was a part of the lake now. She lay a long time, sheltered in peace and fecundity, becoming a skeleton girl tied together with sinew scraps and tattered linen. A gold chain tangled around her clavicle, an oval pendant hanging in place of her heart. A hook cut through the water and caught on her ribs. The lake roared and resisted as the girl erupted from her bed, surging upwards. The speed of her ascent strained at her sinew, and her jawbone gaped in a ghostly scream. She lost finger bones. As she broke through the lake's surface, someone cursed, the sound slapping her hard like a cold wind or a familiar hand. I had made her beautiful. Of course, she had been beautiful to begin with, as we all had been in our myriad ways, bodies, minds, talents. But in truth, our water is both nature and magic. So the girl's bones had transformed to creamy white pearl, her sinew to silk. She gleamed in the sunlight and shuddered as I lost my hold on her. The fisher pulled her halfway over the prow of his rowboat. He ran his calloused hands over her cheekbones and the crystals jutting from her spine, but his eyes blazed at the wink of gold between her ribs. He carefully unwound the necklace. At the edge of fear is a threshold. Like a waterfall I once encountered, thundering outside the mouth of a wizard's cavern. Stay inside and be mired in the mud. Or leap, trusting the river will take you somewhere better, even though it will hurt. There is always a moment before the decision, a moment when a terrible, ponderous knowledge descends, a moment so heavy with fate that we are lost within ourselves. And once that moment passes, we know what it takes to push through the threshold. And equally, we know why we turn away from it. The girl forced her arms up, placed broken hands on the fisher, and pushed. He let go with a scream, scrambling to the back of the boat. It rocked wildly. She heaved herself overboard when the prow dipped, slipping back into my embrace. The necklace sank down after her like a stray sunbeam. Later, the great heron told me the fisher spread his terrifying tail throughout the village. Haunted was the word that he used. The lake is not quite that, but close enough. And that word works as effectively now as any protective spell I cast in life before. The superstitious villagers kept away, turning to their crops and trades to sustain them, and only leaping fish changed the patterns of our surface. Eventually, their boats became hearth-kindling. The girl gathered her scattered finger bones from the lake bottom and uprooted the strong-stalked weeds that grew there, binding her bones together tightly. She would not lose any part of herself again. But now she was restless, unable to settle back into the lake bed. She swam, enjoying her place within the water's own movement, and the fish, grown hale and shiny, darted around her. She glided through decades, length and breadth, back and forth, as the lake healed. The water turned a deep royal blue. In the shallow parts, the bottom became visible, vibrant with plants and salamanders. Her bones hummed with frog symphony at dusk and dawn. In the winter, she skated underneath the ice. In summer, The dragonflies raced her, with the great heron watching. She changed her weeds with the seasons. One day, she basked in the warmer shallows, closer to the trees from the world she had left behind. She listened to the water's song as it played upon the smooth rocks at the shoreline and watched the trees sway above the surface in wind and ripples. A figure crouched at the lake's edge. They spoke, the words coming to her muffled by the perpetual voice of the water. She did not understand the language. Droplets fell on the rocks into the channels between. The water carried them back to her, diluting like ink, but she could still taste the underlying emotions. Despair, desperation. The words spoken did not matter now. The feelings did, and she felt them again after all this time, the terrible heartache and the urge to run. She and this person were the same underneath, in the bones. The skeleton girl rose. She broke through the surface, unflinching as the water slid away. She brushed weed strands from her hollow eye sockets in an old gesture, able to see the person clearly now. They had blue eyes the same color as the lake. They stood, but did not run or scream. Without hesitation, the girl reached inside her chest, broke the pendant's chain, and offered it. After a long moment, the person stepped carefully along the wet stones and waded into knee-deep water to accept it. They cradled the pendant in long fingers, turned it over and over, found the hidden seam. They went back and searched the shoreline until they found a stone with a sharper edge, broke the seal, and pried it open. Out fell a small paper packet. Unfolded, it revealed a poem annotated in ink. Handwritten words scratched between printed lines and stanzas, marked by blots and blurs. The person read it again and again, devouring the words as sustenance. Finally, they took great gulps of air and looked back across the lake with eyes watery yet defiant. I, too, gave something I had a long time ago in a different land. A sword, although eventually it was returned, its work unfinished. I gave it to the wrong person. I gave it without listening to myself, to intuition. In hindsight, it was so much more than a tactical error. But not so now. The girl had listened. Her bones ignite, crumbling into ash, leaving behind a blazing, pure light. She finally sees me then, sees all of us who have been here with her all along, murmuring to her, all of us who had given ourselves to water. We are columns of prismatic flame burning bright above the surface. The images of who we once were flicker inside, never lost. We are all the Lady of the Lake. And now, the person on the shoreline sees us too.
We hope you enjoyed this chapter of Gothic Tales. Want to hear a particular Edgar Allan Poe story? Don't be afraid to reach out. Until then, I'm your host, William Trevino. See you on the other side.